Greetings, everyone. I promised I was going to shave for this stream.
You didn't.
And I didn't. We'll get into my personal life
You're
later.
A scraggly mess.
Yeah, I'm a scraggly mess, which is par for the course given this last month. Welcome, everybody, to the official live stream launch official live stream for the launch of Cloudspire Harbinger, our final Cloudspire campaign.
Yeah.
Almost certainly, it is. It's our last campaign. That doesn't. If this pace continues and this thing blows up, maybe we would do.
There's like 10 more islands out there.
Yeah, we'll find them.
When islands collide, they make other islands.
Correct.
So we should explore those.
Yeah, I thought it was when volcanoes erupted.
Right.
How does island creation in the sky work? By the way, if normally islands are created when volcanoes erupt under the ocean.
Yeah, source volcanoes.
We'll cover this. We're getting into deep
on the
lore
next
already.
campaign.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Good morning, everybody. Though we're off to a great start.
Yeah, this is awesome.
I'm super encouraged. This is great. I'm Josh. You're who?
Same.
We're both Josh. You know me as Gilly. This is Josh Carlson. I'm Josh Welgus. And we're here to answer your questions about Cloudspire. And there are none on my screen right now. I don't. In fact, the screen is blank.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you.
We don't know what to do.
No, I'm panicking. Help. Help. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. We are busy collecting them. And we're going to answer everything that we can about this campaign. I was just reminiscing about the trauma that Cloudspire left me with on the original campaign last night to Mr. Josh Carlson. It's really fun to see this all come full circle. We're excited to finally have found a slot to kind of wrap up the series. And I hope y'all prove me wrong. But what I've been feeling for the last couple of months is that, wow, like we are really going hard on this campaign. Like there's a lot of stuff. 3 new factions, which is more than we did for Ankar's Plunder. The cloud storage, which we told you we weren't going to do, and we ended up doing.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, the Harbinger expansion itself. I think some of the most beautiful and stunning art that Anthony's ever come up with. And same with Jared Blando, who does the Fortress art, as well as like the tile hexes or the hex group maps. Like, I think the new fortresses are 3 of the coolest fortresses we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. We've been working on this stuff for a long time, and historical sales of Cloudspire wouldn't necessarily justify this level of like effort and insanity, but you guys have been asking for it for so long. Cloudspire fans have been more passionate than any other line that we have in our catalog, and I'm really excited, and I hope that my expectations are blown out of the water and I end up feeling like, you know what, this wasn't even hard enough. We should have gone even harder. I've been wrong about my expectations for Cloudspire for the last several years. I don't know.
I mean, it's funny because we were trying to like go into this just with a little bit more modest expectation on all fronts. How much content we could actually pull off, how much interest there would potentially be. But it's just not our MO. Like it doesn't
feel good
jive.
To do that. Yeah.
No. It's like you just have to go hard, and so we're like, here we are again, going hard. Like the days of scratching our heads, Ryan and I, with the cloud storage, and being like, yeah, this doesn't work. We should probably not do it. And then we're like, oh no, but we should.
The next day.
Let's figure this out.
The next day, yeah.
Yeah, the next day we're back at it and we're thinking, and I'm super excited with what the solution is. But anyway, go hard.
Yeah, absolutely. We're over 200,000 already,
nice.
Which again is phenomenal. We are clipping along at a really, really solid pace. Let's jump into some of these questions, and then we can fill dead air with as much blabbering as y'all want to hear from us. You're going to be checking out in a little bit, and we're going to be bringing Salem Scott in to answer more detailed questions about the literal factions themselves. Despite both of us having design credits on the original game, neither of us have been very involved in the new faction stuff at all. And by that, I mean, for myself, I have not been involved in any capacity. I don't know if you have at all. No. My last month's
part
been crazy in my personal life, so if I appear oblivious about anything, it's because I am, just so that you know that. So, yeah.
you can talk about moving and
Right,
and
yeah,
how,
and being sick.
yeah,
If I
yeah.
sound like I have a frog in my throat, I'm getting over a
Yeah.
cold. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's it. Like the team has been working hard on it, and it's super cool to see all of that stuff being play tested and not necessarily be right in the guts of it, because there's people that now play this so much and know the ins and outs of every faction, and on our team, and they are way more skilled and equipped to generate these new factions that are answering a lot of, maybe even filling some cool like mechanical gaps that we wanted to from the factions that exist, and like all that kind of stuff. So it's been fun to kind of stand back and watch from a distance a little bit this time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it should also just be mentioned that, like, in terms of our development room and the company at large, Cloudspire is a lot of people in this building's favorite game that we make.
Yeah.
So beyond the incessant pestering of Cloudspire fans over the years to do more stuff to kind of close out the encouraging. Yeah, I say it all in love. I genuinely say it all in love. I just wait. Every single stream we do, I just wait for the like 2 or 3 questions. When is Cloudspire coming? When are you doing more Cloudspire? But it's the dev room's favorite game in the Chip Theory line as well. So they were all, and when I say they, I mean Ryan and Logan and Salem, were all insanely excited to get back to work on this world and get to design some factions from the ground up.
Yep.
I'll be talking more with Salem later about, we'll probably reminisce a little bit about some of the playtesting on the original solo campaign, which is as good as it is because Salem put it through its absolute paces, like to a level that I had never seen. But yeah, anyway, all that to say, we're just really excited to have this campaign out. We're really excited to, it's dedicated to the Cloudspire fans first and foremost. This is kind of a whole bunch of stuff that we knew was going to speak to all of you who have been playing Cloudspire for years and loving Cloudspire for years. I don't know how many new people we're going to even be able to bring into the fold on this campaign, and I don't know how much I even care. We went really hard to do a whole bunch of stuff that we knew existing fans wanted, and we hope that is really evident in all of the cool stuff that's on that page. So anyway, let's jump into some of these questions. Does the all-in pledge level have the cloud storage box? The text says, but you're not seeing it in product line. That was missed by me at launch. I added it within the first 5 or 10 minutes. If it's not there now, that would mean somebody else saved over it, and we need to get it back added. So, but it should be in there now. So please confirm that it is in there now, because I did add it and saved it. So yeah, it is included, but it had not been added as a line item product in the back end of GameFound in that pledge level, because there were like 19 different things in that pledge level. And when we're proofing some of that stuff, your eyes start to go blurry when you're looking at 19 things that all say Cloudspire on them. So we'll check that. It is included. It's supposed to be included. I did add it earlier this morning. But when we're all working on the campaign simultaneously, sometimes things get saved over each other. So we will triple, double.
It is in there.
It's in there now. Okay, perfect. Okay. What is the status of negotiations for other possible languages? So I will just, this is likely going to be bad news for most people, but we don't have, there's not going to be German, there's not going to be French on this campaign. I can pretty much confirm that. Our partners, so for French, it's generally been Lucky Duck. For German, it's been Frosted Games. Frosted Games loves Cloudspire. Ben from Frosted, it's like his favorite game. And Matthias, the original founder of Frosted, who's not there anymore, he's handed the company off to Ben and I believe one other person. But also Matthias's favorite Chip Theory game, by a fairly wide margin. However, they are so booked up with Elder Scrolls, and so booked up with more Too Many Bones content, and so booked up with Hoplomachus Victorum, and Cloudspire has a ton of text in it, in the solo scenarios and all that kind of thing. So for now, they are passing on it. They hope to do it in the future. I know that, and again, I know they love the game, but right
Yeah.
now the amount of work required, again, just isn't in the cards compared to the other stuff that they already have in the pipeline. So there are a few other smaller language partners that are still looking at potentially jumping on board on this campaign, but we don't have any signed contracts just yet, to my knowledge. Our COO, who generally handles all of our language stuff, has been in Essen for the last week as well, and so we're a little just like the communication hasn't been as like clean and easy as we would normally like it to be leading up to a campaign. So the big ones, French, German, are not going to be happening. Just full stop, at least for now, and at least for this campaign. There may be some smaller announcements that happen throughout the campaign, though.
Yeah, nothing to add except that just with anyone else that's considering it, it's just such a big ask because it's the entire series. It's just like they're not going to translate just existing or new content. So it's just it's a tough one for them to get the numbers to work.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Any changes planned for existing content, or is this just a reprint? This is just a reprint. No changes are presently planned. With this expansion, do you feel a good balance will be there with all factions?
I mean, you'll hear about that soon, but yes.
I don't. I think it will be a bad balance. I'm just kidding. Of course. Asymmetrical games are always really, really difficult to balance, particularly in PvP.
Yeah.
But I know that these new factions have been being play tested out in our other room by our development team like 24/7 for the last decade, roughly. Salem will probably talk about it when they're on camera, but I did hear Salem say the other day, like, I think I might finally be sick of Cloudspire. So that's the amount. Salem's played Cloudspire more than I think any human on the planet, almost assuredly, again, especially because of the playtesting of the original solo campaign. So if they're getting sick of it, these have been tested a lot. And we have also done a lot of public playtesting already with these new factions, which is great. We are ahead of the game in that respect compared to almost any other campaign that we've done. So yes, I do believe they will be balanced to the extent that we can test that without sending it out to thousands of people. So there you go. Any new landmark or market talents? Are there new landmark or market talents, Salem? I don't even know.
I mean, when do you want me to just hop on camera?
I don't know.
We can push that one.
We'll answer that one when Salem gets on camera.
I want them to be able to talk about it.
We have tried to go easy on the amount of new keywords I know in general in this new stuff, simply because, again, the game already kind of suffers from keyword overload. And similar to when we got toward the latter back half of Too Many Bones, we tried to be cognizant of that. Like when we did 40 Waves in Daylor, Ryan and I, when we were making the new mechs in Kreln, we tried really hard to just find new, interesting, clever combinations of existing skills whenever we could, rather than trying to add new skills into the works. So I believe that was the philosophy with the talents on this new Cloudspire stuff too, but I can't say for certain if there's anything new.
I know we've added Roost Roam 2, Roost Roam 3, Roost Roam 4.
And Elf.
And
yeah.
On
those
Salem
same
will
ones.
talk about it.
Yeah. Reminder, if I appear oblivious, I am. So there you go. Any chance of being able to purchase extra references? Would love to for my opponent to have a copy. That's a good question. I don't know if that is something. We're going to be doing a handful of polls throughout the campaign for a few other things. We're also trying to figure out like what the amount of demand might be for update packs from version 1 to version 2 of Cloudspire. And I know we've been asked by a number of people over the years, but that might be like 10 people or that might be like 100 people. And we need to kind of quantify that to figure out if we're able to offer that or what level we can offer it at, that kind of thing. Like, could we do a sticker pack? Would we actually reprint the whole update pack? That kind of thing. So anyway, similar thing. If you're interested in lots of additional, like a reference sheet pack that had 4 of each reference card, or 3, I guess, because you already have one in the base game. Let us know. Make loud noises, scream at the top of your lungs about that. We will maybe do a poll about it and see if we can offer it. What do I need to pledge for if I want to get everything new? You need I think it's called the Harbinger gameplay pledge, something like that.
I will tell you.
I forget what it's called, but it's like the base level pledge for the campaign. It's $110. That gets you all 4 of the new boxes plus the little bonus bounty promo. Harbinger gameplay bundle. That is your ticket to paradise right there.
And that's that. They're not saying gameplay, right? That everything new.
Yes. Yeah. So okay, sorry.
Yeah,
so that would be everything new
yeah.
gameplay wise.
Right.
Again, we haven't put most of the accessories and other things into any particular pledge level simply because a lot of people are going to be mixing and matching that. Not everybody was going to want the minis, that kind of thing. So you're going to want to start at that Harbinger gameplay bundle level and then add anything else that you would like a la carte. So if you want the Volume 3 minis, add that separately. If you want the cloud storage, add that separately, etc. Can you explain in more detail about how some items for Cloudspire will be out of print? You want to talk a little bit about that and the economics of that?
So which things are we talking about here?
Here's what I would say, since he's giving a very bad answer to this question. He's like, what campaign are we even running? I don't even know. Again,
out of print stuff.
I don't say this. When I say things like this, again, people think I'm being mean to Cloudspire. I'm not. There are a number of things in the Cloudspire line that have not sold well outside of campaigns, meaning we have overprinted stock for many of these things, and it has taken a very, very, very long time to sell through. The minis are one example of that. They just haven't flown off the shelves outside of a campaign. And so basically what we're saying about Cloudspire moving forward is that we're not promising anything aside from probably the base game is going to like permanently stay in print. Simply because, again, the economics make it so that it doesn't make financial sense to reprint some of this stuff. Another item that would be kind of in that category would be Hero's Bounty. Has not sold terribly well outside of a campaign. Most people got it for free in the Inkar Splendor campaign, and most people have it who are big Cloudspire fans already. So the idea moving forward is that likely, especially for the minis, almost certainly we're going to be moving that down to a single SKU, and that is the fully loaded minis box. And we'll see how well that even sells. But if you have bought Volume 1 or Volume 2 of the minis and you're looking at adding Volume 3, or you have or you missed out on Volume 2 and you're looking to add that, those types of things, now is the time to grab those items, because I cannot promise that we will reprint them. That's not a threat. I hope everything sells really well and we're reprinting this stuff till Kingdom Come. But we have to make hard decisions sometimes just about how things are selling. And so the minis, especially in their individual volume state, I think this is likely the last time we will ever print those boxes with just a single volume in each box.
And the overages will be lower.
Yeah,
so
the overages will
just
be lower. Yep.
Kind of a bare minimum orders.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then again, some of the other things that don't sell quite as well are like the hardcover books and that kind of thing. Now we have a decent amount of overstock of some of these things still sitting in the warehouse. So like I that's also not me saying like they're going to go out of print any second.
Yeah.
It just means we're not promising anything Cloudspire, and that also includes cloud storage. There's a huge demand for the Trove chest for Too Many Bones, but Cloudspire has sold a lot less than Too Many Bones lifetime. So if you want a cloud storage box, the only time I'm ever going to guarantee you can get it is right now. I hope you can get it again in the future, because I hope it sells well enough that people want it. I'm just not promising that, and that's a purely economical decision. Again, we're doing more for this campaign than likely makes financial sense based on the history of this game. So we're trying to kind of give everybody a chance to dive in now, and you'll be able to dive in the Pledge Manager as well if you're not able to dive in during the campaign. But that's where things are at. I don't know.
I'm laughing because our manufacturer, when I told them that we decided to do the cloud storage, and they kind of You did. That was basically the response.
Good.
Great. I think
Thanks.
that both they and us, took some hits on that one, but it's a cool enough product that we do believe, we understand that, if you can sell a cloud storage box, it's promoting all the other content that will hopefully get put in that box. So we understand that. That's one of the big reasons to do it, is it does help sell the rest of the line. So we're okay with a little bit of a wonky profit margin on that, but it was kind of a funny discussion of and we want to make it stronger and so it's been a fun one. All right.
What made you change your mind about the cloud storage, Josh? What was it?
Partly that.
What was the main thing?
Initially, we actually really felt like it was an important thing to help sell the minis, because we wanted to encourage that. But then when we found out that the minis, we scrutinized every which way to, we really feel like the storage needed to get, the walls need to be a little bit thicker, because then it allows for the channels that hold and support the horizontal shelves to be deeper, and the whole thing can get more glue in those channels, and therefore it's just a stronger piece altogether. And the manufacturer was, Gameline was yeah, we agree that needs to happen, which cuts down the space of the current storage size by a bit, and it just wasn't happening. We were we were taking minis, and we were okay, if we take two Bronn fortresses and we twist them like this, and you insert the legs into the legs, and
if you
and
put
then you
the
tuck them way over here in this corner.
Rotated northeast.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
It was just yeah, we're really, really trying too hard to make these fit in this thing. And the whole, one of the big points of it, of the trove chest, was just, it does make the game easier to table. And that was can we make Cloudspire easier to table with this cloud storage or not? And so we did a couple things, the tubes definitely help with that. You can grab your faction, which is your dice and all of your faction chips out, just the factions that you're playing. So there's a little bit of efficiencies there. And then, yeah, it's got the same type of magnetic drawers. It's got things kind of parsed out a little bit better than stacked literally on top of everything else in your base game box. So I think it definitely helps, but and that was the main reason we kind of kept forging ahead on it, was because it looks cool. It's something that we love the look of in the Calyx, next to another, the Bones one. But for the most part, it was just to help aid with other sales and kind of show people that we're vested in literally the entire line. So
And just in case we get accused of lying about the cloud storage, the final decision about it was truly only made about maybe 2 weeks ago. We went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth again and again.
3 or 4, but yeah.
Yep, on what we were doing with it and whether or not we were even offering it and that kind of thing. So it has, because there's another question right here basically saying any chance that you'll have a prototype of it or anything that can help you visualize, and the answer is no. No. That graphic that we have on the campaign is about, we might be able to get a little more detailed than that, but that's about what you're going to see for this campaign, because again, and that render is about a week or less old in terms of being able to even show that much. It's something that we only recently made a final decision on, and those things take a while to get prototyped and that kind of thing. It's going to be a bit. So let's see. Are any of the dimensions for the storage box known at all, other than it fits in a Calyx?
So right now, at least, the form factor, it's got the same width and depth as the Trove, and it's about 2/3 the height. So there will be a gap on top. We did it that way for a couple reasons. One, when we determined that minis wouldn't have fit into an entire Trove chest, and it just won't. They just without it being an insanely weird process to pull all the minis apart and actually take you longer to table your game. So once we determined that, we were like, well, now you have a bunch of space that we're actually not able to utilize. So we reduced the size for so many different reasons, but the cost is one of them. It's a lot of material to get it all put together. So to about 2/3. That height is still a little bit TBD because we need to see how thick those walls need to be, and just like what kinds of like we've mathed out most of it, but we want to know that the drawers are dialed in just right so that they will fit multiple things if we need them to. So 2/3 is about as accurate as I can get right now on height.
Is that a new sky mat on your table? No, it is not. This is we have several of these tables, some Cloudspire, some Elder Scrolls, some Bones, around the facility, and these are all custom made inserts that go. And obviously, we're doing a Cloudspire stream, so we wanted to sit at our Cloudspire table. I don't know where this art came from, actually.
Good question.
We'd have to ask our graphics department. These just showed up one day, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. There's clouds.
It's
Neat." And a little elf and Kazi. Yeah. Will the prices be different in the Pledge Manager? Probably not. No.
Probably not.
No. Especially with a line that we're trying to really allow as many people in on this kind of last hurrah as we can. PM will likely be exactly the same. Yeah. And we will offer stretch pay in the Pledge Manager as well. So if you do not feel like you can commit at this time, do not fret, do not worry, do not fear. There will be time. Question here about the sculpts from the 2nd edition miniatures not fitting chips. That was not an issue I was aware of, but if you have any issues, just reach out to customer service, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. I know, we haven't had any, we've been out of stock on the Volume 2 minis for a while, and so it may have been an issue of we couldn't get you a replacement. Sometimes when things dry or cure, I'm probably not using the right terminology for miniature stuff.
I'm not going to help. I'm just going to butcher it.
It can contract more than you want it to, and so then the plastic is bad. That's what I got. It may have just been an issue of them not of them being pulled out of the mold too early is really what I'm trying to say. But
no known issues there. We do put those little plastic foam pieces in there so that if they're shipped on their side and they're, I don't know, if they're still in flux or not fully cured, you got that one right, then those sides can come in, so that keeps them open, but shouldn't have an issue, so support can help you.
Though I would note, support will not be able to help you until we get the new print run of them in, which is still going to be a little while.
Thank you.
So, yep. Do you need to play the old expansions before the new ones for solo only? What is the recommendation? So mechanically, absolutely not.
Nope.
Mechanically, you can play any faction scenarios in any order. If you want to play through the narrative of Cloudspire, we would recommend doing it in the order that is presented in the scenario books, basically, which would be Braunin, Heirs, Nerora, Grove Tenders, then Griege, then I think it's Horizon's Wrath, then it's the Uprising. I might be swapping those two. And I'm not sure what the recommended order on the last three is, but Salem, I think, will be able to speak to. Shada, Keel, Graft is the new order for the new factions. Again, mechanically speaking, play them in whatever order you want, but if you want to read the narrative and follow the... and the narrative is really good for this game, by the way. Kudos to Ryan Howard, our writer on all of this stuff, and kind of the guy who came up with a lot of even some of the factions and how they're interacting and that kind of thing. The story and narrative for Cloudspire, I think, is our strongest story and narrative of any of the lines that we've got. And we, again, I can't speak to the new factions, but I know on the previous factions, we worked really, really hard to make the storyline for every scenario tie in really, really heavily with the mechanics of the scenario at play as well, which is something that I think people who have really fallen in love with this game have that's a piece of what they love so much about it, is that it really feels like you're playing the story in a really meaningful way, in a similar way to I've seen it compared to Warcraft 3 a lot in that respect, both mechanically and storyline wise. So yeah. There's a very small line of text underneath this highlighted question. Is that supposed to be?
Nope.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure. I'm like, I cannot read it. I feel like I'm at the optometrist. Are you going to include solo AI talent sheets for each faction? Perhaps as a stretch goal. Again, not any plans to do that right now. But again, in a similar vein to asking for the just additional reference sheets, if that's something that a groundswell of people asked for, we could certainly take a look at it, or at least making it a downloadable PDF that you could print. Maybe not necessarily offering it in PVC form. How many solo scenarios will be included in this expansion? So again, every faction comes with 4 solo scenarios that each allow you to get anywhere between 1 and 3 renown on them. So most people replay them 2 to 3 times, and that's assuming that's if they win. And then 2 cooperative scenarios for each faction as well. The Harbinger expansion right now on its base comes with, I don't remember. There's some additional scenarios in the Harbinger expansion, and then there are some that will be unlocked as stretch goals as well that haven't been developed yet. They are true stretches. So if we keep funding at this level, you can expect to see, hopefully, another nice handful added to the Harbinger expansion.
It's proof we haven't developed them, because the graphic we have for that stretch goal is
the extremely
placeholder, very first Brannon scenario.
And I would just say the amount of effort and love that goes into every single Cloudspire solo scenario is immense. So when we do unlock a new scenario, it is a large scale undertaking from our whole team to get that developed, a story written around it, and play tested. Like they're a lot of work. There's a lot of love that goes into them, and I think that shows in the way that they play. So yeah. Any chance of some updated chips? I don't know what that means.
I mean, would it be the update pack? Probably.
Yeah, if you're asking about the update pack, again, we will likely be doing a survey at some point in the campaign, gauging the amount of interest that exists or doesn't exist for that. So stay tuned for that. If you're talking about balance changes or anything along those lines, I don't believe any balance changes are planned at this time. Any new skirmish scenarios in this campaign? Not presently. I think the skirmishes are awesome, and they're one of my favorite ways to play Cloudspire. But we did not, again, the legacy of this game has tended to be around its solo campaign first and foremost. And that is kind of where we've chosen to focus a lot of our energy on this campaign. So my interest is in the 20 strong Cloudspire deck. What are my options? You can buy it. That is your option.
We have a link to the base game. You can buy that on the store, or we'll likely offer it in the PM as well.
I would. So again, there's offering flat rate shipping and heavily subsidized shipping like we do is a double-edged sword on any campaign.
Right.
It's really hard to sell really tiny things to people with subsidized flat rate shipping like on this campaign. So if you're like in Europe and you're like, I'm not paying $15 to ship a deck of cards to my doorstep, right? I get that. That's totally reasonable. The Cloudspire deck is not going to be exclusive to this campaign. It will be releasing on our web store when it comes out promptly after this campaign fulfills. So my recommendation, actually, if you're only interested in Cloudspire 20 Strong, at this point, the most financially viable option for you is likely simply to just wait for it to release on our web store and purchase it there. So it will not be that will not be a limited print item of any kind, I don't believe. And Cloudspire is going gangbusters for us right now, so I expect we'll be printing that long into the future as well. So there you go.
Yeah.
What's Salem's favorite new faction? We'll have Salem answer that question in a minute when they get up here. But I'm 99.9% sure I can say it's the Graft, and I'll let Salem explain that in a minute. Will there be a comprehensive or updated rulebook? Not at this time. How many players is cooperative mode for? It is for 2 players. Some questions about talents that, again, I think Salem will be able to better answer.
Yeah.
And then what's the fulfillment timeline you guys are aiming for?
Yeah, what do we put on there?
I can't remember. It's been a month, you guys. It's been a month. My brain is melting out of my head. I think we're aiming for late next summer, if I'm not mistaken.
Next week.
Oh,
Sweet.
wow. That's not true.
I don't think.
Where does it say?
I don't think it shows on that. At least not here. We'll get back to you.
I'll get that. It should be when you click into a pledge, though. It should
tell you what we're
say estimated fulfillment date. It's next year. It's I think between summer and fall of next year is what we're.
2025.
Sorry, what was that?
Q4
2025. Okay, so fall of next year.
Yeah,
that's what we're aiming for. It's completely fair. We have so many plates spinning right now. You got like we're trying to get Hoplo shipped over here. We're trying to get Elder Scrolls shipped over here. We're mid-proofing cycle on 20 Strong Tanglewoods. It's coming along great. We're working on getting Roth ready to get sent to print.
Yeah.
There's just so much stuff. And again, that doesn't even touch the insanity that has been my personal life in the last month. So thank you for bearing with me and my ignorance and my obliviousness, because that's just life right now. Yeah. That's all the questions that we have. If you have specific questions about factions and that kind of thing, we're going to bring Salem in here. And this is your chance to ask the really, really deep dive stuff on what is a graft and why is it gross? That kind of thing. Care? Like the really deep questions. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you bet.
Leave.
I will.
Thanks. Are we
we're back.
We're not spotlighting a faction right now, are we?
No. Okay. So our first spotlight is going to be for the graft on Thursday.
On Thursday. Okay.
Yep.
So we should open by just saying we are doing dedicated live streams for each one of these factions, and then we're also doing a stream around 20 Strong Cloudspire. So we do have the entirety of these factions to show off to y'all. They are like development is. Aside from a few balancing things that are still ongoing, development is done for the new factions, which is awesome. I think y'all are still working on the solo scenarios.
Yeah, so Ryan and I in particular have been spending like the last 2 weeks just doing as many PvP games as we can, like 1v1s, because we were doing playtesting since June externally, both with a group I was bringing in on Fridays and with people online with like Print and Play and Tabletop Simulator, and we got a lot of great feedback from all of that, and so we're taking that and we're sort of focusing into the last 2 weeks we've been just dialing that in, making some final tweaks and changes based on the feedback, us playing through just so many 1v1s to just sort of see like, okay, is it still feeling good? I always have a lingering suspicion, though, there'll be like that one extremely weird thing somebody out there will find. It's like, oh, actually, here we go. And it's like,
We all live in fear of Wave 1 Royal Talent reimmersion.
Oh, gosh.
Essentially.
Well, so that's actually funny, because that was the thing we intentionally designed these 3 new factions to be able to, like, go up against, is like, okay, well, what happens if the heirs do a Wave 1 Royal Talon? And I remember it was just the other day, we did a Keel heirs matchup, and Ryan was playing as the heirs, and he kept rolling a 3 on the command die every single wave. And I'm like, and I was still able to hold my own. He did win that game, but like the Keel in particular have probably the strongest starting hero in all of Cloudspire. So it really helps deal with like if you send a Royal Talon out wave 1 against the Keel, it's like it's not going to do as much as you hope it will. It'll still probably hurt, but like they can hold their own, and then if the Keel get going by end game, they're nasty. So
beautiful. So let's maybe open with answering the question that was already asked.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is, what is your favorite? Well, no, sorry. Yeah, well, no.
I was going to go like the talent.
Yeah, let's start
okay.
with the talent thing.
So
yeah.
actually, yeah. To put it plainly, the question, what was it? It was, are there any new talents for the new market chips and landmark chips that we're adding?
Yep.
And the question is no.
You mean the answer is no?
Oh yeah, sorry. The answer is no. And so actually, what I mean by that,
also
so we were sitting there as we were designing these. We were like, okay, so I made a list of like, what are all of the current talents that we can put on market chips and landmark chips? And then I looked at what are all the talents that if it weren't for just one word in that talent description, we could put on market chips or landmark chips. So for example, if I'm not mistaken, I believe engage has, the way it's worded is any unit that can attack this landmark must do so. And because we put that word landmark in there, like, oh, technically we're not allowed to put this on a market chip, because that wouldn't be a landmark. So what we're doing, and we're probably going to provide, I don't think we've 100% nailed down how we want to provide it. If we want to just provide like a, hey, by the way, some of the talents might have like refer to nouns that aren't relevant to the chip. Just pretend like swap out landmark with spire or something. Or we might reprint that reference sheet so that those are updated. These are not changing the rules on the talents themselves. So it's not like all of a sudden engage will work differently. It's just now the wording of engage will allow for something else to have it.
Allows it to be more flexible.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so we've done that. So like we put swindle on a spire, for example, which currently is like when this unit attacks or retaliates steel source. So it's like, okay, well, that doesn't apply to a spire. But if it just said when this spire would attack steel source from that faction. So again, the talent works the same. It's just we're and that allowed us to come up with some really fun creations without adding new talents as a whole. So that's why the answer is like no, but kinda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that one.
Cool. Okay, so then let's follow that question up with what's your favorite new faction? Even though
okay, so I do have to say the graft. I remember. So the three of us, and this is Logan, Ryan, and myself. I think it was like in winter of 2022. I think the three of us got together because we all were like, hey, we want to do more Cloudspire. And we all sort of sat down and came up with some faction ideas. And then I remember we brought it to, I think it was you and Josh was initially, and I think Adam was there too. And we pitched them and be like, hey, we want to do more Cloudspire. And I remember like, you thought all of them were interesting, but again, it was still like, where in the schedule could we put this? Do we still feel like we want to do this? All of these questions, even though it was like okay, the design stuff is there though. There's cool ideas going.
Yeah.
There is room for this game.
There's meat
to
on
expand.
that bone.
Right.
When will we feed it to people?
Well,
I'm going to extend this metaphor as far as I can.
I mean, I guess fall of 2025, I suppose.
Everyone was hungry.
Everyone.
We knew. This is going
I
off
gotta
the
keep
rails.
going.
I'm sorry.
I
didn't get a lot of. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
Anyway, so so I, as the person who designed the Graft faction, I mean, I feel like I do have that bias there in saying it is my favorite. That being said, though, I've really come to love the two other factions very much. So they are, they're also unique in different ways. I'm excited for us to do the spotlights.
Give us a quick, like not a spotlight level, but like a quick rundown of what is fun about the Graft.
Yeah. Okay. So the Graft have a few different things that are really fun about them. One is their Fortress Gate is mobile, so they have their starting hero Nucleus, which functions like a hero, but also functions like a Fortress Gate. And so that does restrict its movement because it's like they always have to be connected to a path, which connects to all the marks. But it allows you to be hyper aggressive because you can move your deployment. It's kind of like what the Breach can do with their tunnels or what the Uprising can do with the Waygates, but to an even more more free degree. Like you can really put your Fortress Gate whatever you want if you can get Nucleus there. The downside, of course, though, is that your Fortress Gate is a hero, which means it can be hit by spires. So it's like normally it's like unless you're going against the Brahmin, you're like, okay, if a enemy puts a spire near my fortress gate, yeah, it's gonna hurt my units, but I can take it out and it's not gonna hurt my fortress. Whereas all of a sudden it's like, no, they're gonna be building for Nucleus. So it's important to try and
Oh, we
300.
just crossed 300K. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Nice.
let's go.
The last stretch goal that's showing for me right now is at 175K. I need to refresh and see what. Y'all are gonna make me upload more stretch goals today at this pace.
Let's do it.
Okay. I think we only have like flavor text and stuff written for all of the stretch goals up to 500K. So I'm gonna have to go write more dad jokes. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's one thing that's really cool about Nucleus. The other things that are really unique to the Graft is both in an effort to try and minimize the amount of new keywords, especially because I'll say the Graft, to anyone who has worked with me, it's no surprise that the Graft is probably the most complicated faction. I tend to have that effect on things I work on. I apologize. But because the Graft have a lot of complexity in how Nucleus works and how you can upgrade Nucleus and get new fortress advancements, which lets it do more things, I wanted to try and be like, okay, but I want a good chunk of your units to sort of be ones that you're familiar with. So it works thematically as well, because it's like the idea of the Graft has been sort of expanding its scope and it's been grafting other units into it. And so 4 of its units are ones you've seen before. So there is a Warbriar, a Joust, an Aegis, and a Messiah. And they're identical to their counterparts from the original on their promoted side. However, though, their promotion mechanic, it's sort of like because it's constantly recycling itself, it is this single organism that is dividing and decaying and regenerating and all of these things. When units die near your spires, they get absorbed onto the spires and sort of function like 1 damage fortifications. Like it can just tank a hit, but 1 damage will remove it. But then when they go back to your barracks, that chip, that just that specific chip, not the whole unit as a whole, like the type as a whole, but just that 1 chip will now forever be promoted for the rest of the game. And then when those minions promote, they actually gain one of the talents of the other minions in that rotation. So for example, the Warbriar has Impale. When you upgrade the Joust will then have Quick Strike and Impale. The Aegis has Armored and then gains Quick Strike. And the nastiest one, before I get to the nastiest one, the Warbriar gains Immolate, which is from the Messiah. So it's fun to have these little cheap units that you can just swarm. And if you can get Nucleus up to your opponent's fortress gate and just swarm it with a bunch of Warbriars that blow up when they get there, it's really fun for the Graft player. At least. Yeah,
I was just gonna say that sounds fun for one person.
Don't let Nucleus get up to your base.
Yeah.
Use spires.
Yeah,
it'll scare Nucleus away.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Good. Yeah,
I'll save the.
We'll save some of the rest for
the last one for later, because the Messiah upgraded is probably the nastiest unit in the game.
And from a storyline perspective, also, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but like the Graft are the primary villain of this part of the story arc.
Mm-hmm.
They essentially begin to take over, and all the factions have to try and stop the Graft from spreading and just destroying everything, basically.
Yeah, because it is essentially an unfeeling organism. Mm-hmm. It's not out for conquest. It's literally just hungry. Because through the course of the war, the sources depleted from the interior of the islands, which is also causing the islands to go all crazy. And then the Grove Tenders were kind of trying to keep the Graft in check. And all of a sudden now it's okay, it's getting too anxious and too wily. It's awakening, and it is taking over.
Yeah. It's a cool end to the story. It's a really cool end to the story.
Yeah.
It's and it doesn't go where you'd expect it to go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think.
Yeah, because the rest will be because you play as the Graft. If you go them in order, you'll play Shada, Keel, Graft, and then most of the Harbinger scenarios will take place after that and revolve around sort of how do all of these factions deal with the Graft and what's their route forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody is asking any questions of you, Salem.
Wow.
The chat is dead.
Wow.
No one cares about this game.
There is.
That's not dead. There's just no specific question.
All
okay.
my suspicions have been confirmed.
This is a
and that's
question.
that
Here we
nobody
go.
cares about this game.
Oh my
I'm just
gosh.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
What is, in your opinion, the easiest faction to learn and the most complex? What PvP 2 factions are the best to pair together, in your opinion, as well? So I'd say the easiest faction by a good margin is the Brahmin.
Yeah, still.
I
Yeah.
don't think they are the easiest to master. I think that they are almost deceptively simple. It took me a long time to get good with the Brahmin. Like I was doing complicated plays with the Nerora far before I was winning games with the Brahmin, because they seem so simple. And so then you're like, oh, cool. I just promote units and send units out and I win. And no, you got to be smarter than that. They are very strong if you know how to use them well, if you like lean into their architects or the source siege, or you just go absolutely ballistic with source generation. I finally, the other day, tried, I got the drilling one, which is a very popular wave one, but I did that whole line and I was building like dozens of drilling outposts across the map, and I just never had a lack of source. So I was buying everything by the final wave. It was pretty great. But they're definitely the easiest to learn. I would probably say the most complicated of what exists currently. So I'd say the Graft is probably going to be the most complicated. Shada's got some they've got a lot of things at their disposal. And so I wouldn't say their mechanics themselves are complicated, but it can take a while to sort of be like, oh my gosh, what's the best thing to use in this situation? But as far as what already exists, I think maybe the Nerora or potentially the Uprising. And the Uprising, just because of the fact that you don't know what you're going to get. You're at the mercy of the market to a degree. And
yeah, it's not necessarily complexity, but there's I don't know. It's there's a question of complexity, then there's a question of like skill ceiling as well.
Right.
And the skill ceiling on both, I think, the Uprising and Aurora are exceptionally high because there is so many units you can deploy. You have so many different options for what you can do. I think a lot of people have a hard time winning with the Aurora because it's harder to like fashion a good, effective strategy with them.
Yeah. So the Aurora is probably the most complicated of what exists currently. Just because they work in a more, like, you have to play it more abstractly and do very strange strategies in order to win. As far as the last bit of that question, what PvP2 factions are the best to pair together? Honestly, I think probably, especially if you're like looking to learn. I don't know if that's what the question was going for, but if you're looking to learn, I honestly think Brahmin versus Grove Tenders is one of my favorites. I
would agree with that statement.
Yeah, because especially too because the Grove Tenders are one of those factions that I think, even though they seem complicated on the surface, you're like, oh, you're going to have to be changing your minions mid-wave with the summoning and do all of these things. It's actually pretty easy to teach. I think they'd probably be the second easiest to learn. And they feel very fun to play as a new player because you get to sort of see like, whoa, look at this big thing I get to deploy mid-wave. And the other person's like, oh my gosh, why do you get to do that?
Yeah, if you get YVNK out.
Oh,
like
everyone's first game against
they're like,
YVNK.
That's impossible.
You're like, wait. So you gotta buy market stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's probably one of my favorite matchups to sort of teach people the game with as well. Yeah.
Good question. What was your favorite faction to play during testing of this expansion, other than the Graph?
Okay. I honestly have gotten I've become very fond of the Keel. I was especially too because like the earlier versions of the Keel were very powerful, too powerful kind of thing. I remember we had a moment where we like looked at a unit and we're like, how did we have it so that I can have a 8 attack, 6 range minion? That doesn't seem right. Yeah. So obviously we were like, okay, yep, we have to make some adjustments. So they started off incredibly powerful. I had this one play tester who was in my in-person group who came in and he would always play them. And I always wanted him to play them because it's like, okay, we've made changes. They're weaker now, but you know how they work. Can you still do well? And he just kept dominating. And we're like, okay, we're going to still peel it back, and the main question
Peel
is
it
like,
back.
main question is like,
That'll
is
show up
it
in a stretch
still
goal
fun
flavor
though?
text
Like
soon.
every single time I'm like, all right, they're weaker now, but are they still fun? And every single time he's like, oh yeah, the fun factor is still there. And then when Ryan and I were playing the other day, we were still making some changes, and I just got to the point where I'm like, yep, their mechanic is so cool. As a quick snapshot of what they do,
They're bats.
they're bats.
That's it.
That's the whole snapshot.
That's the whole thing.
But no, their spires promote their units, and so you get this really fun like game of like putting down a spire to promote, and then they have ways to get spires outside of the normal like sequencing, and so you can do these really cool combos. I remember I did. Ryan was running at me with, I was playing against the Heirs, I think it was that same one, and he came at me with Keem, who has flying. And he was just like, are you going to just do something really stupid and I'm going to lose something? And I'm like, not yet. And then the next turn I did a thing and I got a Spire out, which gives all of my minions on that hex group flying, and then I was able to take them out. And he goes, okay, that was pretty cool though. So yeah, I'm loving all three of the factions, but the Keel is the one I think that I've, over the course of playtesting, have come to really, really resonate with.
Yeah, great answer. We covered, so somebody's asking about the story of the graph. We covered it a little bit a few minutes ago, and maybe this question was asked before we had already done that. But yeah, essentially the thing on the graph is that they've been living like inside the islands for a long time, but the balance of Source has been keeping them at bay and keeping them like satisfied and keeping them not from wanting to get out and do horrible things. And now with the Source dwindling, the powers that were keeping them like inside the islands have effectively petered out, and now they're getting out and eating stuff.
There is the follow-up question: who are they most allied with? Because they are not a conscious faction, they're not really allied with anybody. They can't be. That being said, and this is kind of a bit of a spoiler, but I think this is the scenario I'll be showcasing in the graph spotlight. The Nerora at this point sort of become very fractured due to some of the events in the Shada and Keel campaign, and so they're like breaking off into splinter groups, and one of those groups kind of like views the graft as the embodiment of the Source itself, which is what they've been sort of fusing into their body all this time, and so they view the graft as like a very, very powerful, important being. And so there is a cult that sort of arises from the Nerora about like trying to propel the graft to absolute dominance. So in that way, the Nerora are their closest allies, but not in the conventional sense.
Yeah. Can you...
Yes. This is something I wanted to make sure I talked about. Can you talk about the new Hero Tower chip upgrades and their effect on balancing the mini factions? So yes, that is something that wasn't quite completely clear when looking at the Harbinger expansion box. It said it added more Spire Hero like upgrade chips.
Right.
These are new upgrade chips. These are not just adding more to the attack, range, and fortification. These are actually new effects. To quickly run through what they do, I might have some of the exact details wrong, but one is essentially like a retaliation, where it's like when this Spire or unit is attacked by an opposing unit, or after it is, it loses 1 HP. So that's in addition to a retaliation, or if your hero's already retaliated and somebody else attacks you, they're still going to take that damage. And it happens even if when the upgrade is removed. Obviously, only for that attack, like it wouldn't keep going.
Right.
But if the attack is what removed that upgrade, they still take the damage. And then I bet there's a lot of Brahmin players out there that are very excited to hear that you can give air defense to a dispatch platform now. Like, you don't have to wait till you buy lance launchers. That one was a little bit of like, how can we sort of add something back into the game to help with some of the more nastier matchups? Brahmin versus Heirs being probably the most notoriously difficult matchup for, especially if it's like new players and you don't know how to use the Brahmin to their full extent, and even if you do, that can still be a really tough wave one. So this gives you an like a little bit more options, so you're not at the mercy of spending all of that source. Of course, though, when you do it, you're giving up a potential range upgrade or a potential attack upgrade or even fortification for defense. So, it comes at the cost, and like putting it on a hero can be really good. But again, attack upgrades are so good on heroes. So is that, but we've been having a lot of fun testing them out. There's some factions that just really jive with some of them, like the Graft, for example, putting the retaliation one.
You made them OP. You made them OP.
I didn't make them OP.
You made them
I
OP.
Putting the retaliation one on Nucleus, because it's like it's going to retaliate like a Fortress Gate, but then you're doubling that retaliation damage. So it's sort of like when you buy like the Grove Tender or Bronid advancements that increase Fortress retaliation. It's a nice way to do that. But yeah, they're really cool. They're really helpful. We've been excited to use them and excited to incorporate them in. But on the flip side too, there's only 12 of them. There's 4 of each. So they are limited. So especially when you get into higher player count games and people are like snatching them up, they go much faster than the conventional upgrades.
Yeah. Which game mode and player count is your favorite? Gosh. I don't know that I have a way to answer this question that doesn't sound like a cliche shill for this game. Because my answer is honestly like usually whatever mode I played last. I'm not a huge solo player, even though I worked on a ton of the solo stuff for this game. I really enjoy skirmishes though, and that's the last game of Cloudspire I played was with skirmishes. But then I don't know, I often feel like I look at the co-op scenarios and I'm like, gosh, this is just a lot. Like we are this is about to break. There's so much weight put on here. And then every time I play a co-op, I'm like, this is great. I love this. And then every time I play PvP, I think the game is best at 2-player when you're playing PvP. It just is because that's the most tactical way to play the game. Just against one other faction, you're at much less risk of dealing with RNG that kind of like can screw you over. On the other hand, every time I play at 3 or 4 players, I'm a chaotic neutral or a chaotic evil player. Generally speaking, when I play board games, I don't tend to have a great strategy. I tend to just like, let's do stuff and see what happens. And 3 and 4 players so chaotic that I also kind of love that. So, but I think the game plays best at solo and 2 players. If people are asking for a specific player count that works best, I do think 1 and 2 player is where the game's real sweet spot is, both in terms of strategy and game length. Because when you get into 3 and 4 player games, there's a lot of downtime between turns, and it can take a little bit. That's my answer.
I would agree with that, especially when it's like the question of it's like, oh, what does the game shine best at? I do think the nature of the game, solo, co-op, I'll add co-op in there as well, and 1v1s. That's where everything sort of really shines, and it's like that's like the best. That being said, I have become extremely fond of 2v2s because I've done a lot of those over the course of playtesting, and 2v2s have just become very crunchy to me. Like there's a lot of tactics in working with your ally, and positioning like your starting maps to help each other, like where you like start and deploy, and even though like oftentimes it ends up being like almost to a degree that's like 2 segmented 1v1s because it's like, oh, I'll go for this person every time, I'll go for this person, the moment when it's finally like, wait a minute, actually let's switch marks here and cross because we have a cool thing we can do here, it's super cool.
I don't think I've ever played it 2v2.
It's fun. Now, granted, I because we don't have a big robust section on how 2v2 works, there's a chance that I made up some rules. But
we'll take a look at that. We should at least make that a downloadable if that's a really fun one.
Because there is a section that says know, how it works, but there's like a few things that I'm like, ooh, okay. If we were to like rewrite these rules to a degree, there's a couple things that I'm like, oh yeah. This just to make it like flow a bit smoother.
That's awesome. This is a good question. How many hours of playtime do you guys go through to play and successfully find balance between the factions? Which was the easiest and hardest to balance? I can't speak for this development cycle necessarily, but I would say it varies based on the complexity of the faction and how straightforward some of the things are. Like some of it's math. Like we've got game development is done 90% in spreadsheets until it gets out on the table, and even then, it's usually adjustments to spreadsheets. But you take a look at like what's this faction's average attack, what's this faction's average movement, what's this faction's average like damage that they can do on a given turn.
Command point cost, source
yeah,
reward,
all that kind of stuff. And so sometimes if a faction is fairly straightforward, a lot of that stuff comes easily and it doesn't take a whole lot of tweaking. In a similar way to like when we were getting into developing Too Many Bones Unbreakable, like we knew, relatively speaking, how powerful things needed to be, like, and you get a feel for it, and so it doesn't take as long to make little tiny adjustments all over the place. But on something this asymmetrical, especially in PvP, especially when you have a legacy of additional factions you need to test against, I'm curious to know how long. I mean, again, I know y'all have been playing it out there for a decade, and I know that we opened public playtesting on this stuff much earlier in the process than we generally do on TTS and that kind of thing. So I don't know. Do you even have an answer for that? Do you even know?
I mean,
we haven't been tracking it specifically.
Yeah, for the hours question, simultaneously too many and not enough. That's kind of how it feels. Like, it's one of those things where there is always more to test. Like, especially because we're adding new market chips and landmark chips, the new Spire and attack up or hero upgrades, and new I think like a new isle or so, like that changes the map layout and all of these different things that it's like, okay, all right, are any of these going to just be exploited by one specific faction? It's really hard to be able to say that confidently. So it's like there's always more to test, but obviously we don't have time to test literally everything. That's impossible.
Right.
While also at the same time, like, I mean, am I actually sick of Cloudspire? I did say that. I did actually say that. That being said, today has been like
to feel bad about
seeing
yourself.
the response to the campaign and getting up here and talking about it. I'm so excited again, and I'm like, okay, no, I'm not actually sick of this game. I love this game. But to answer the follow-up question, like, which is the easiest to balance, hardest? I can't speak to like previous content, but of these three, I'd probably say, even though the Keel probably had the biggest shift from their initial strength to where they're ending up, honestly, I think the Graft was probably still the hardest, because the Graft work in such a different way, and they are a faction that's like incredibly stubborn and like hard to kill. And so it was all about finding a way where it's like, okay, well, we want to make sure if you're doing well against the Graft, they're not just going to still win just because they're stubborn. We want to make sure it's like, okay, no, you can still get a head out of the Graft and still win. While also at the same time, we didn't want to make it so that if you're playing as the Graft, you're going to get overwhelmed early, but you have to sort of exist in this hellscape, trying desperately to live until the end of the game where you can make a comeback, because that is stressful and annoying. So it's like, it was all about fine-tuning those details, making sure like the interesting, because I remember in the first wave of playtesting, we sent it out, and there's like an infest mechanic on the worms that live in the Graft. And I remember so many people saying like, infest seems cool. It's not worth it, and it's impossible to get like to trigger. And I'm like, yeah. So it's like, okay, how do we make it so it's easier to do? How do we make it so it's like more appealing of an option to do, without, on the flip side, making it so oppressive where your opponent is just like, yep, I guess, kind of. So I'd probably say the Graft was the hardest. The Keel had the biggest difference, but it all was pretty intuitive. It all kind of made sense. It was like, yep, okay, let's tone this back, test it again, make sure it's still powerful and fun. Oh, it is? Okay, let's keep going, kind of thing. And the Shada, honestly, so kudos to Ryan. Shada, pretty solid right from the get-go. Like, we tweaked a handful of things. There was one in particular, talent, which was really good, that we brought back in line a little bit. But for the most part, pretty solid, so that was probably the easiest one to balance, because we didn't actually have to do very much. So nice job, Ryan.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see. Is there any new, weird, different ideas on the map tiles?
So I I believe at least one of them is a stretch goal. We have
Yeah,
one of a stretch goal. I can't remember exactly, and I don't want to like promise all of these, but one is pretty standard. One is sort of like it's got a big, like almost like a double wide path just going through the middle. Obviously, it's not actually double wide. It's like 1 and then 2 and then 1 and then 2. That one's pretty standard. That's sort of like, yep, this is just like a nice little addition. The other two are pretty weird. And again, I don't know which ones we're saving as like a stretch goal, which ones we're sort of feel confident in putting in. I'm not 100% sure. One of them reintroduces the sky hexes that we had in Portal Seekers. So, of course, the Harbinger will come with a thing of, here's how sky hexes work. So, in case you don't have Portal Seekers, you still know how they work. And
Basically
then,
a giant hole in the map.
Right,
Is the idea. Yeah.
and then the other one is 2 non-connected straight paths that don't intersect. And that one is very funky because it's like when you get it as your starting aisle, like you're like, okay, well, I have to connect a path to the center and I have to attach my fortress in a way that I'm connected to that path. So it's like, okay, so you're pretty much only having access to half of that. But then if you can reveal the next one and like rotate it, you might then open up a secondary route that doesn't require you to go through the center aisle. And so it can be really fun and interesting. The graft in particular, because you can like move Nucleus around. If you can get that other path to still connect to the marks, it can be really fun to just move Nucleus over there, and all of a sudden the enemies have to make a longer trek. And same with like the Uprising. Like you could go and build another waygate over there, or go build a tunnel with the Greege. Do a lot of fun things with it.
Or get a Source Siege headed that direction.
Oh, and just sort of sit in the back line, hitting everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of Source Sieges, why are the Bronnans so weak? Please explain, how can you win with them? No one I know and have played a game with can win with Bronnan in a PvP game.
So, I mean, it does come down to the matchup, I think. Obviously, you're playing against the airs. That is a tough matchup. I do think the air defense upgrades that we're adding will alleviate some of that. But it is a hard matchup, for sure. That being said, I like the Bronnan. I've come around. Like the Bronnan were probably the last faction I got good with because they seemed so simple, so I wasn't using them in smart ways. Honestly, I cannot stress enough how much I love the Source Siege. I think it is
one of, the best units
if
in the
not
game.
the best unit in the game.
Yep.
And just going, so like their stuff is expensive. So going so heavy into Source, like if you can get, like, for example, the one that lets you build drilling outposts on non-path hexes in your influence, and you just plant like 3 of them on an aisle nobody's bothering to go to, that's what? Because you get like 6 from them, so that's 18 source you'll get at the end of the wave. Like it's, and then by that point you're like, I can buy everything. You get your source capacity up to 30. Like they don't seem like their source production is as good as it is on paper, because like you look at the Grove Tenders who have a similar wave 1 kind of purchasable source production that's just better. It gives them +4 and they get to increase their source capacity, but that's it. That's where their source production like ends for the most part. Whereas the Bronnan, if you get that whole line and just build a bunch of these drilling outposts, as long as you can survive, like not get destroyed those first 2 waves, you know, which depending on the matchup can be easier said than done, you know. But yeah, you can, like we were doing a Shada Bronnan match the other day, and I think the Shada are quite powerful. And I was nervous because I was playing as the Bronnan, and I'm like, okay, and it was a close game, but I did end up winning. And I did that whole route, and it's just like, all right, here we go. No, I think the Bronnan are, their simplicity makes them harder to play because it feels like you're not supposed to do weird stuff with them. But I do think there is weird stuff you can do with them that like feels, it doesn't feel super intuitive.
Another common Bronnan trick that a lot of people I've seen use to really annoying and good effect is throwing an Aegis in front of an Architect, so that
so it just keeps,
so the Aegis the Aegis keeps like just plodding along, and the Architect can stay close to spires for like multiple turns and like keep building upgrades to spires.
You get like 2 of them out or so.
Yeah,
you just go absolutely bullet. So like, because
like,
if you can get an early lead with the Bronnan, you can just secure that by
Yeah,
just
yep.
pumping up those spires.
Yeah. But yes. Yeah. Especially in certain matchups. And again, the heirs being the primary one that they can feel weak. It's a fact of the matter. But yeah, I do think those new upgrades, just being able to give any spire air defense is a big deal. Okay. As someone who enjoys Too Many Bones, how would you say the learning curve to learn Cloudspire is?
It's very different.
It's very
I'd say.
different, yeah. Also depends on what mode you're playing, I would say. So learning to play Cloudspire PvP well is a lot. And again, that's because of the wild amount of asymmetry in the game and how much it matters to your strategy versus in Too Many Bones, like it doesn't, like your teammate Gearlock is wildly different from you, but that doesn't really matter to you. You're just managing your own deal. To play Cloudspire well, you need to understand what your opponent can do. So the base rules of Cloudspire are way simpler than TMB, like way simpler. But the amount of asymmetry that's going on and how much it matters to you as a player is way higher than Too Many Bones. So the love it, hate it sort of deal with Cloudspire for a lot of people has been how able are you to deal with the large amount of keywords that are going on the game. Because really the most of the learning that you're going to be doing is going to be around the keywords that are on your units and around your opponent's units. I'm answering this question poorly because I'm not really answering it. They're very different games. Like the keywords that are on enemies in Too Many Bones, on baddies, there's more of them in Cloudspire,
because like each faction introduces new keywords that are only found on that faction's chips.
Right.
You know, like
you're discovering landmarks that sometimes can turn over and have like game-changing keywords on them in certain cases. And if you didn't know that existed, sometimes people
Unstable
are like,
rift,
"That's not
cough,
fair."
cough.
Yeah, like that's not fair. That's too strong. That's like whatever. And again, all this stuff has been balanced, but it's balanced within a world where the assumption is you know that all these things exist.
Yeah.
So sometimes it feels like there's like mean gotchas. So that's where learning Cloudspire is just harder in that respect because like there's just a lot more to take in for you to effectively formulate a strategy is I guess what I would say to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why solo has been the most popular mode in Cloudspire, because you can take it at your own pace. You can learn the keywords at your own pace. And we designed the solo scenarios of Cloudspire much in the way that games like Warcraft and StarCraft and really a lot of RTS games, old real-time strategy games, kind of do this, is like they teach you about your faction as you play it. So, in your first scenario, you're going to be asked usually to do the most obvious thing with your faction. And then in the next scenario, you're going to be asked to do something kind of a little bit weird to win. And then in the next scenario, and by the time you get through all four scenarios, you're like, oh, I really fully understand the depths of what I can exploit with this faction and what they're really, really good at. So, I don't know. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty solid. I honestly think my favorite way to teach this game to people is, even if I plan on playing PvP with them, honestly, I go through the solo tutorial scenario. Like, even though it introduces mechanics that you don't need for PvP, such as enemy AI movement, it's a small map. There's not a ton going on. It just is like a simple way to learn the basics of the game. And then that's why also, too, Brawn and Grove Tenders, I think, is probably my favorite matchup for starting players, because if I use that to teach them the game, they've already gotten a chance to sort of see how both of those factions work to a small degree. But yeah, no, I think you answered it pretty well.
Are there any changes to the event deck to make it a bit more balanced? There's not. The event. Go ahead.
Oh, so you're right. There's not. But I do want to take this opportunity to officially endorse a very popular house rule I've seen out there that I think is it. To quote, I think I saw Shannon respond to it once. To quote that, it's not very thematic to choose your event, but there's a popular house rule out there of drafting events. I think it's also very popular to not play with events. I think that's also totally fair. events add a bit of a chaos element to the game that is part of the appeal for some players. Like, for example, when I play in 3 or 4 player, you bet I'm playing with events. I want the chaos. But when I do a 1v1, maybe not, because I kind of just want to sort of test my strategy against the opponent.
And certain events can play into certain faction strategies,
Right,
like in a significant way. Yeah.
So the popular house rule, again, not very thematic, but it works as like a way to sort of still play with events but give you more agency. Is you have the starting player draw a number of events equal to player count plus 1, discard 1, and then pass the out. And so then the last player in rotation will essentially have 2 choices of which event to trigger. But everyone gets a chance to be like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's nice because like you can try and force your opponent to pick one that's going to help you, but also you can make sure you get rid of the ones that you're like, oh, I do not want this one because this one would hurt me, or this one would help another player. So that if you don't like the raw randomness and chaos of just drawing and resolving the top event card, I fully endorse that house rule. I think it is really, really good one.
And this person's saying the Grove Tenders are weak.
I mean, their follow-up where they say maybe due to bad spires, you're not wrong. The Grove Tender spires are definitely not their strong suit, and they're not intended to be either.
Yep.
I do think something like, oh gosh, I'm reading the next question, and I know it's my fault, I think. Anyway, yeah, like their spires are not their strong suit. I think things like cover can actually be used to a pretty sizable degree. I very rarely see people get good use out of cover, but when I do, it's like, oh, smart, because then you can keep your taproots alive for a bit longer so that, because essentially the longer you wait to summon, the more stronger your units are going to be, because like you essentially, like, especially if your Grove Tenders take like a hit or 2, because then you're like, cool, that's damage that didn't get applied to my big units that are going to be coming out. I do also think as well, sort of a very cheeky strategy to force your opponent to maybe do something they don't want to do is use Wyvern K. Because if you can get Wyvern K out with Impale, using like either Impale or like Ram to just completely invalidate the enemy spires, and you're like, you can't hurt her. She will literally just go and cause havoc. And so your opponent then has to either pre-buy something from the market to help deal with her, or then immediately buy something at the next opportunity. And especially if you can get an attack upgrade with the use of that 1 die, Wyvern K just is such a menace. But I do think
that's my favorite way to play the Grove Tenders.
Oh, yeah.
Again, as an agent of chaos, running around with Wyvern K with my opponent being unable to do anything to her is just, it's my
also too, like, obviously like making sure you get good source production, which is why like honestly investing in the spires isn't, because like they're expensive and they're not particularly powerful. And so there are other things that are much better to spend your source on. Which namely being either the summon or the taproot evoke, or evoke or the taproot summons. Because if you can get Wybanth out there and just, even though she brings in like the unpromoted ones, it can still just be overwhelming. My biggest recommendation, I mean, this is not an actual like genuine strategy, but let die win die, like 100%, and then you can bring in
it's
Wybanth.
Right in the name. Die win.
Soon.
Obvious.
Because, as far as like heroes go, it's nice to have a ranged hero to start with, but like the usefulness of Evoke and the usefulness of Wyvern K just as a whole, to get those 2 out there, and then you can use Evoke and you can use Taproot summons to sort of pick up on the unit loss that you might have had by putting out 2 of your more expensive heroes.
Yeah. Question about the spelling of camouflage on the Grail Leopards. That is a typo. It is not supposed to be camouflag, and that's Salem's fault. And they will
spell it wrong every single time.
They will be punished. I'm just kidding. Can you explain skirmish mode? So skirmish mode is a 1v1 mode that we added. I think there's 10 of them. I think maybe more.
I thought is there. I don't know.
Or is there less than 10?
I thought there was less. I would have guessed 8,
Wow.
but I haven't looked at this off cover for a while.
between 1 and 10 of them in the Volume 2 book. And again, there's a soft cover version of that you can order off our website. I don't think it's included in the campaign right now. But it's essentially a new way to play 1v1 that is tailored to specific factions and often has a like objective attached to it. So rather than just smash each other's gates, it's like you're fighting over something in the middle of the map, or the win condition will be slightly different. It'll be I'm blanking on some of those win conditions right now, but again, it's a like a scenario based 1v1, and again, most of the skirmishes work fine with multiple factions involved, but they are designed specifically for 2 factions to be at its like most optimal balance.
There's even one in there that a lot of people sort of like to use to learn PvP. I think it's Reignition, I think is the name of it. I could be wrong on that. But it is, and honestly though, to those who remember when we did our Cloudspire tournament at Origins, I used that as like an inspiration to make a bunch of like smaller maps because we wanted to get these games out faster so we could run multiple and do a whole like round robin kind of tournament to sort of see. And so we had smaller maps, and we also introduced like a couple of like streamlining rules for that, which I would still like to be able to kind of like make like perhaps in the future like officially canonize like tournament rules and like give a printable PDF or something.
Sure. I mean, we might.
That's
even something we could look at throwing into the Harbinger box.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Salem, what's your favorite new market or landmark?
All right. Okay. So I have a few, and I have some that are like fun because they're really cool, and I have other ones that I like because they're really mean. As far as the really mean ones go, we saw the thing about the Grail leopards. Honestly, the 2 new Grail things we've added, the Grail leopards and the Grail turtles, are so mean because they have Relentless, which, to anyone who doesn't know, Relentless is when this unit retaliates, you roll a Spire die and tally up the damage until it gets a miss or a 2, and then you apply all of that. So it's incredibly risky. You should probably never have a hero attack first against one of these unless it's going to kill it, because there's a good chance, no matter your health of the hero, it might die. And currently, that is on a few different landmark units, but that's their only talent. Like, it's on the bees, it's on the wolves, and I think it's on the vipers. And so we added it, and now the turtles have armored, which reduces incoming damage by 1.
I didn't even see that.
And it has Relentless. So if you have somebody with range but only 1 attack, you can't deal with it. And then the other one has Camouflage, which can only be attacked by adjacent units.
The turtle's got some, if you know Final Fantasy at all, the turtle's got some like Tonberry vibes.
They do,
going
yeah.
to it a little bit. You can see the art for that turtle is at the bottom of the Why Back Now section too, so if you want a higher res version of that art. But it's got some, both in form and function, it's got some Tonberry vibes to it.
Yeah. Probably my favorite market chip is one of the new pieces of equipment. It gives you speed, which we already have like the boots that do that.
The drug or the
talent.
Oh,
it
great.
increases your
Okay.
movement stat.
Yeah,
by
okay.
1. So there's already the Source Ride boots, I think they're called, that give you +1 movement. And this one does the same, except for it also gives you entropy, which is when your health is reduced to exactly 1, you explode and you deal 2 damage to all adjacent non-Neuroran units, which is risky because it's effectively lowering your health stat by 1 to a degree, but you might be able to use it aggressively. And then if you're playing as the Neurora, you're like, haha, yes, I don't even take damage from that. But because like speed is such a fun ability to give on a hero, I think it doesn't seem like it's that fun, but that 1 extra movement can be huge.
Yeah.
So we wanted to add another chip that like increases the chances of that happening. But I was like, oh, it'd be really funny if we then give you entropy as well.
All right, that appears to be the end of the questions. We are sitting at $370,000 in funding. That is that is well above what I expected to be at noon on launch day. So thank you all for turning out for this campaign, both for the live stream and for the funding itself. We've got a whole bunch more things planned throughout this campaign. The first stream coming at you this week will be Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time. When does Daylight Savings Time end?
I thought it was going to end already, but it hasn't.
At some point, we're going to switch from CDT to CST, and it's going to throw me off. But
is it next Sunday?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I'm asking the more responsible people now in the room.
Time has no meeting. 10:30 Central. All of our streams for this campaign are scheduled for 10:30, whatever status Daylight Savings Time is at any given moment. But I know that changes even internationally. I remember we were in Essen one year, and so we flew to Essen, dealt with the time zone change, jet lag, all that stuff. We were in Germany when their Daylight Savings Time triggered, and then flew back and dealt with the jet lag coming back this way. And then a couple days later, American Daylight Savings Time triggered. And so my brain and body were confused forever. It was weird. But anyway, 10:30 this Thursday, we'll be showcasing the Graft. And I think that same day we will be showcasing 20 Strong Cloudspire as well. Is that correct? I believe Thursday?
Yeah, it'll be a separate stream right after.
It'll be a separate stream right after. So, and I'm going to warn you all up front, the 20 Strong Cloudspire deck we're going to be showing is going to look real janky and ugly because it's still in prototype mode.
Same with the factions, I think.
Yeah, we don't have it moved over to the shiny template that we're showing on the campaign just yet because we just haven't, our graphics team hasn't had time to move all of that data over into the new template. So we'll be showing it on a grafted version that looks a lot like Solar Sentinels and Too Many Bones 20 Strong. But from a mechanical standpoint, 20 Strong Cloudspire is done. We just need time to get art and layout and everything for it finished. So what you'll be seeing though is very representative of the final mechanics for 20 Strong Cloudspire.
I believe the rulebook is even.
Yeah, the
on
rulebook's
campaign.
posted. Yeah, yep. The draft rulebook.
So it still needs to be proofed. It still needs to go through those editing passes. But again, the rules are solid. Barring any typos that mess with the rules,
right,
of course. But the intentional rules.
Right, exactly. So again, another live stream coming at you Thursday morning. Then we've got 2 additional streams coming, I think, next week. 3 additional streams.
Well, 2 next week.
2 next week. Which will be showing the Keel and the Shada. So lots more to come. We're going to be doing a lot of updates throughout the campaign that are going to have some story elements and that kind of thing in them as well, and give you an idea of what to expect along the way. But thank you so much. We're about to unlock another stretch goal at 375.
Did you ever mention the minis box? How it holds the new minis box up?
So yeah, just in case, and I think this is fairly clear on the campaign, but just in case it's not, Volume 3 of the minis comes in a giant box that will hold all 3 volumes of the minis. Then there is an additional new SKU that is the complete set of minis. It comes in that exact same box, so the box is the same with both. One is not different than the other, but one of them comes fully loaded with all 3 volumes of minis. One of them just comes with Volume 3, but with space to put your Volume 1 and Volume 2 minis inside that same box. And that was done, again, because we determined that we could not get it all in the cloud storage box. So we are still trying to offer a comprehensive storage solution for your minis so that you feel more excited to get them out on the table.
The one last thing I wanted to bring up, because I was just thinking of it when I saw the campaign page, just to get out ahead of any questions on it. I believe it's the free pack,
the bonus bounty.
The bonus bounty. Yep. So to any returning backers, you might realize on the front there's a card called a relic card called Flame Harness, which is actually not the first time that's shown up. That was I think the final stretch goal in Anchor's Plunder, which was a tease at the Shada back
4 years ago.
4 years ago, when we were thinking they were going to make an appearance a little bit earlier and everything. That relic card does not function at all for the one that exists that you might have in your copy right now. It will not function for the Shada. The Shada did not they
didn't go in the direction we thought they were going to go. Yeah.
And so that's why in that pack one of the cards, not the whole pack, but like one of the cards is essentially a replacement for that, where it will now work with the Shada as they actually function. But yeah, so
Yeah,
anyway,
good
I just
call.
wanted to get out that ahead in case anyone goes like, wait a minute, I think I've seen this before.
Yeah, you have.
You have, but the text is different. So.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. Thank you all for joining us. We will see much more of you, and you will see much more of us in the next 17 days. Thank you for backing this campaign, and thank you for all your support of this crazy title. We will see you Thursday, 10:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time. Until then, I'm Gilly.
I'm Salem.
Have a great day.